You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
Welcome to the 21.5 Show, a podcast for professional pilots by professional pilots. Join Dylan and Max, both with experience in flight instruction, the airlines, and business aviation, as they talk to a variety of industry experts, share stories, and have a little fun along the way.
Here we go, episode 73, 21.5. It is the show for professional pilots. We've got two professional pilots riding the mics. My name is Dylan. I'm a pilot in business aviation. I'm joined by my colleague, mentor? I don't know. Advisor?
Don't push it.
No, I don't know. Welcome, Max.
All right. What do we got?
Couple fun little segments we've got here today on this show. Of course, we're going to check in with our friend Tim Pope, certified financial planner, and talk about taxes, which is just
Always riveting information for aviators, but
if you've heard Tim before, he's a great communicator, and we had a great conversation, really trying to relay this stuff in a way that is relevant to professional pilots. So I think it's going to be valuable.
it's always one of those things I think pilots are always too quick to turn a blind eye to, which is taxes, financial planning, just put it in the bottom of the stack and worry about it later kind of thing. But
Yeah, you got to face it head on.
that's it.
And then our first real gear review segment
Yeah.
is going to be coming up, and that you were spearheading this effort to do some research on...
Yeah, I was doing 3 bags at work, a cooler bag, a flight bag, and my rollerboard, and it was just untenable. It was really obnoxious. I'm like, I gotta get out of this. So I started doing some research on these bags, and it's kind of hard looking at them to decide which one is best for you. And so we solicited some of those vendors. They sent us some demo units, and I took them to work in a real life scenario, how I use one of these combination cooler EFB bags, and we'll break it down.
Okay. And then I got to add a little disclaimer here. Like, a gear review on a podcast is a little challenging, right? Because it's all audio. So this is our first time doing this. We did, however, record video of it. The camera work was a little questionable because I was the cameraman. So you could blame me. What we're going to do is we are going to post the video version just of that clip on our YouTube channel, which we'll have a link to in the show notes.
So if you're really interested and this is a segment that really pertains to you and you're trying to make a decision, maybe the video component.
Yeah, the video component might be useful.
If not, completely ignore it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, but before we get into those segments, we should start off by talking about these hats that we ordered.
Currently donning one.
You're wearing one right now. Lots of our listeners have purchased them, including Brendan, James M. from California, Troy, James M. from Oregon, Mark, Jordan, and Rich. Thank you so much.
Flying off the shelves.
I know. Maybe I should have ordered more. I don't know. If you want to get one, you can visit the link on our website. I've got a little graphic now. It says, click here to get your hat. $55 donation.
Is there a photo of the hat?
There's a photo of the hat. It's all on there. $55 and we'll ship one out to you. Like we said, we know it's a ridiculous cost for a hat, but basically it ends up being you get a hat and you donate $20 to the show. That's kind of how it all works. So thanks to everyone who's already got one. And you can visit our socials to see pictures of the cap if you'd like. Other housekeeping, no reviews to read this week, unfortunately, but I've got some stickers to send out to the folks who reviewed the last episode. So if you want to get some 21.5 stuff, just write us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be happy to ship you some swag. Let's get to the meat of the conversation today, though, starting with the mailbag.
All right, the mailbag today is brought to you by Advanced Aircrew Academy.
Oh.
Aircrewacademy.com. Good day, gents. I like your recent podcast and have heard several positive comments from friends and colleagues. You put a pretty positive spin in our industry and did a good job outlining some of the challenges for spouses. Being an old fart and having kicked around aviation for most of my life, I felt you didn't address the elephant in the room. That is how our industry can destroy marriages. The temptations that exist while traveling are real, both sexually and with alcohol. I've seen many families broken because of infidelity, and alcohol abuse among crew members remains a problem. I don't know how you follow up on your last conversation, but these issues should be discussed openly and honestly. Our industry likes to keep them quiet and swept under the carpet. Dave. He's obviously referring to our episode, if you haven't heard it, when we had our spouses on and spouses of other aviators from the military and airlines and everywhere else. So He brings up some good points, which we've actually discussed, Dave. I will let you know that we're not dancing around the elephant in the room. We have talked about having some people on that deal with that uglier side of our business.
Actually, Dave has a good referral for us too. I had talked to him about it. And so we've got somebody that we're looking at talking to. But he's right. I mean, our friend Eric, who we went to college with, summed it up best. He said when he was younger and going on trips, and he's like, basically, all you got to do is show up. And all of the other elements are potentially there to get yourself into trouble, with other people and alcohol and everything else,
Time on your hands, a hotel room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he makes a valid point.
All you got to do is show up, basically. And so I think that is a good separate episode for us to discuss. I think that what we talked about from the spouses was like, hey, what can you expect? But yeah, there is definitely another conversation about what are the challenges.
Well, that and also just the nature of our business and traveling and being gone of the AIDS, as they call it, aviation-induced divorce syndrome. And even if that does happen, there's a lot of things that are different for pilots getting divorced than other people because their schedule's so weird if you have kids and all of this other stuff. So all issues which we are not afraid to dig into, and we will in the future.
But great email and great points, Dave. We appreciate you keeping us honest. Next email says, Dylan and Max, thank you so much for the awesome podcast. I've been listening for about 3 months and I'm hooked. Funny, informative, and entertaining. The issues in your recent episode about non-flying duties really hit home for me. The Great Resignation, along with airline attrition, has forced managers to analyze their employee workloads. Safety Stand-Up was formed as an attempt to relieve some of those duties for aviation industry operators. We provide administrative support for an organization's safety management system while allowing frontline employees to focus on the main thing, which is the mission. He goes on to say they provide a real person, not software, that can help you realize your potential with SMS. And they can train a safety officer or do whatever you need, basically, and help you out with all of those many safety acronyms, FDM, FOQA, SMS, etc. And that email's from Chris. And what he's mentioning, if you didn't hear our last episode, is where we're basically talking about outsourcing expertise to relieve workload for flight department managers right now, especially when we're seeing folks potentially get overworked. And I think another factor is, too, when we're seeing a lot of people leave for the airlines, and then maybe a younger, more junior or less experienced person is now getting promoted into that chief pilot role. And they're like, whoa, I wasn't really prepared for this, but now it's kind of been laid at my feet. And so we're starting to learn, hey, you could outsource some of that stuff. You could maybe outsource some of your safety stuff if you need, or your dispatch and scheduling. And so I wasn't aware of this, but thanks for the info, Chris.
I know you guys typically discuss questions and issues from pilots who are already getting hired or are seasoned professional pilots, but I am a 600-hour CFI who's exploring options, and I'm currently in the cadet program at SkyWest. I'd love to hear a discussion on the show about low-hour/inexperienced pilots and what we can do to be proactive as we grind for 1,500 and make ourselves more desirable to employers in the present and future. My overall goal is international wide-body captain. You gotta love the poignant diamond dog talks on my hour-long commute. I think Ted's dry and tragic sense of humor somehow helps too. Keep it up, and thanks for helping to maintain my sanity. Austin.
Dry and tragic.
That's the best description of Ted's sense of humor I've ever heard.
Yeah. Good question, Austin. I feel like we've tackled this one before.
Yeah, if we do try, and we also a lot of times frame it as starting it. What would we tell our kids if they wanted to be pilots, like from zero to hero and everywhere in between? So I think if you listen to some past episodes, you'll be satisfied.
Here's the basic advice, right? You are a 600-hour CFI and you've got 1,000 hours to instruct, okay? I mean, there's really no shortcuts to that. Everybody knows that. So what else can you do? Like we've talked about with James many times before, it's the outside the cockpit experience that's really going to set you apart right now. That's basically all you can do, assuming you're maximizing all of your flying. So do you have interests that could potentially lead to some type of volunteer or leadership experience? I'll give you an example of one that's pretty cool that I saw the other day. I have a buddy that's a really good golfer and he loves golfing. And there's an organization that started that is a mentorship, a golf mentorship group where they bring in maybe foster kids or other kids that maybe don't have a strong father figure in their life. And they bring them out and they play golf with them maybe once or twice a month. And if you've ever played golf, well, you kind of know you get a lot of time to talk and you're kind of playing a sport, but you can also kind
of... Not really a sport, though. Is that what you're saying?
Come on. But anyways, he loved to play golf and he got to do this great volunteer thing. And it was like a win-win.
It also makes you feel good when you volunteer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's helping other people is
except for being good for your career potentially. Yeah. It's also nice.
So that's just one example, but try and align your passions with something that you're going to volunteer with would be my advice. If you're like, I'm going to volunteer somewhere just because I need it to be on the resume, it's going to be very tough for you to follow through.
Here's the other thing I'll add to that. That's great advice. That's exactly what I would have said. You framed it as, we're grinding for our 1,500 and then we're going to get picked up right away by an airline, which is true right now.
Right now.
When things change, if there's less spots than there are people with 1,500 hours, you're going to be either just another dude or gal that has 1,500 hours and was a CFI and went to whatever aviation college, or you'll be that same person that also volunteered and did this and that. And so that's the biggest thing, is that when things get more competitive, having something else that sets you apart besides your flight time and experience that is paralleled by everybody else, that's another time it becomes very, very important. I've been saying this too. Aviation is like musical chairs.
Yeah.
The music will stop and hope you have a chair to sit in, and it's a pretty decent chair. But the music will stop. It always does. It always will.
On the flying side, depending on if you're at instructing at like a 141 school or whatever else, I would also recommend trying to become a check airman if that's possible at your school.
Check airman, if you can be the head of safety, anything, some other title that I was the interview coordinator. Remember it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, any other job that's, again, not something that everybody else is doing, which is being a CFI, which is important, but stack your deck.
I agree. So there you go, Austin. All right. Great emails. We appreciate everyone writing in. It's info@215podcast.com if you've got an email to send to us. Of course, the mailbag is brought to you by our friends at Advanced Aircrew Academy, aircrewacademy.com. We've talked at length about all of the different modules they have, all the different training topics they have on their website. One of them is upset recovery, and we are excited to bring more to that conversation in a future episode. It's been a hot topic this year, so we'll have a link to that course if you'd like to take a look. And then we're actually going to be talking to we've already talked to one of their subject matter experts, and that's going to be coming up in a future episode. So I'm excited to share that. Coming up next, Flight Advice, brought to you by Harvey Watt.
Hey, 215, I wrote in a few months ago asking how to make connections while I'm at a flying college in the middle of nowhere. Since then, I've been hitting the grind as a CFII and started MEI training. I have my eye set on a particular fractional operator once I gain the experience. New question. I find myself looking at websites that have private 91 or 135 low-time opportunities in smaller piston or turbine aircraft that are in, for the most part, single pilot capable. What are the red flags or things to look out for when looking at these low-time postings to make sure I can legally log the time when it is in something like SIC in a King Air 250, Caravan, etc.? I've never heard of it happening, but I would hate to take a job offer, move, and then realize I cannot log the time. Your input would be much appreciated. Thank you, Dimitri.
Okay.
This has always been the age-old question.
This is a tough one. Everyone grapples with
What's
this.
that airline in Hawaii with the caravans?
Was it Mokulele or something like that?
You fly right seat in
a caravan.
So,
yeah, I think you're smart to realize there are red flags here. And I think there's a couple of different things you have to take a look at. Is this an established operator operating under some type of certificate? That might help with the credibility of the time you're logging, right? If you're a required pilot under the type of operation, that's going to be a much stronger case than, a local doctor has a King Air and I'm flying right seat in a King Air 90, just babysitting.
Yeah, under Part 91, in an airplane that does not require two pilots, it would be difficult to log the flight time in the right seat. Operation, if it's at the same King Air is on a charge certificate that requires two pilots as part of their certificate, then the interpretation generally has been yes. But remember, there's a 6151 pilot logbooks that what the regulation says, but the regulation doesn't necessarily mean that's what a potential employer is going to view. They all have their own interpretation of it in addition. So the good news is that at least you have your eye on a particular place to go. And if that's where your focus is, then you need to find out what their definition is.
Get in contact with the recruiter now. This is a great strategy anyways. get in contact with them and say, hey, I'm a CFI. I know I don't meet the minimums now, but this is where I want to go. And for whatever variety of reasons that you want to be there, and say, I'm pursuing building the experience that's required there. Would you mind if at some of these opportunities I'm looking at, you could start to bounce some stuff off them too and be like, what do you think? I'd be flying as a SIC in a PC-12. What are you guys going to think about that time? Use them as a resource. I mean, look, pretty much everybody's dying for pilots right now. So a recruiter's going to give you the time of day in this current environment.
Sure. And even better, go to one of these events where that recruiter is present, because then you never know. A lot of times people go see a certain employer specifically that's going to be there, and they leave wanting to work somewhere else. You just never know what's going to happen. And so those career events like Women in Aviation, OBAP, NGPA, all that stuff, those have been
super valuable.
Getting really positive reviews from people that have attended those.
You're right to see those red flags. And I guess the last thing too is if you did take one of these jobs where you might question your ability to log the time, it might be worth it if there's a clear path to something else. Oh, come work here and sit right seat in the caravan because we want you to get 25 hours of observation so that we can turn you loose yourself.
That's a good point too. Even if it's time that might not be able to be counted if it gets you to the next step.
But you would want to make sure that that was all.
Yeah.
Like, not just, oh, yeah, of course, we're going to put you in the left seat.
Well, that's the risk. That's always the risk in any aviation. Even going to the airlines from a good corporate job, there's a risk. There's an amount of time you're exposed there. You might get furloughed. Things might change anywhere in aviation. So nothing's going to be foolproof, that's for sure.
But I'm just thinking if this person's like located in a smaller city for some reason, and there aren't that many different opportunities. So a lot to think about there, but you're on the right path, watching out for those red flags. So yeah, that was flight advice. If you need some flight advice, of course, you can visit our website, 215podcast.com. We have an anonymous form you can fill out and send it our way. And we'll do our best to get a diamond dog in to help out if we can, or we'll offer our own unaccredited, unaudited opinions if we must. The flight advice is, of course, brought to you by our friends at Harvey Watt. They are the largest provider of loss of medical license insurance to professional pilots around the globe. We are both happy customers of Harvey Watt Protected.
I don't know about you, Dylan, but I sleep much better at night knowing I'm covered.
Absolutely.
It's my medical.
That is right. Don't take that flimsy piece of paper for granted. Protect it. It's the way you're going to put rice in your bowl. HarveyWatt.com. You know who used to say that? Rice in my bowl?
No.
George Takei, our boy. Put the rice in my bowl. I'm so excited, Max, because we have a diamond dog on the line who knows what a diamond dog is.
Oh, you do? You watch the show?
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? I thought you did.
No.
You should watch Ted Lasso. That's why we think it's so funny. No one else knows what we're talking about, but it's all right.
We're, of course, talking to our friend Tim Pope, certified financial planner, partner of the show. And Tim has got some riveting news for us. Tax time is coming up.
Sit down, everybody.
That's right. Prepare. Pilots love to think they can manage all of their own finances. They know everything about everything, of course. And when it comes to tax time, maybe that's not a good attitude to have. I don't know.
I just had a guy on my last trip telling me about how he thinks he can write all the operating costs of his personal airplane off as training expense since he's a professional pilot.
100%. Go for it. Well, welcome, Tim. Good to talk to you as always. What are you seeing out there? What are pilots up to this time of year?
Yeah, well, hey guys, thanks for having me back. And what are pilots up to? Well, depends on if they've asked before they executed or if they had a lot of fun in the past year and now they're just dumping the documents onto the CPA. But I've been talking to a lot of pilots here in the past couple of months. Obviously, it's tax season, so taxes are coming up in our conversations, so much so that I wanted to talk to pilots, just their circumstances. So number one, I think my refrain that I'd love to share with people is, look, ask before you execute when it comes to your tax circumstances. Pilots as a group, your opportunity to earn is too high to just be messing around and not trying to plan from a tax perspective, because Uncle Sam, he's going to want his share. And so as it relates to what are pilots up to, we're looking at whether or not they should be doing Roth or 401k contributions. I've had conversations about rental, real opportunities there, and then tax planning as a whole, just having your financial planner partner with your tax preparation person, your CPA or your EA or whoever's doing it, to drive the strategy together.
I like your ask before you execute because that translates into exactly what most professional pilots do when they're making an entry on the FMS, right?
That's right.
You make a change to the flight plan and then you look to the other pilot and you say, does that look good? And then they'll go, yep. And then you push the execute button. So I think that's easy to remember advice. So what would you say? Have you seen anyone make any big mistakes recently? What's a big problem area for pilots?
Yeah. So there's two things, right? With the 401k contributions for guys or girls who are doing it themselves or who are partnering with a CPA, typically the CPA is going to say defer as long as possible, which means put the fund into the pre-tax side of the 401k. Well, the problem with that is if you are a strong saver, and I just define strong saver as you max out your 401k and you're still looking for other places to save, and maybe your spouse is doing the same thing. The problem with that is time compounds your decisions and it also compounds your investments. So you end up with this huge pot in retirement where you're going to pay tremendously way more taxes on then than you do today. So I'll give you just to keep it easy and light, right? Like, so say you're 40 years old, right? And you max out your 401k at $20,500 this year. And we assume an 8% return for the next 25 years until you need those funds.
I'll sign up for that.
Yeah, I think 8% is not being too crazy, nor is it being too conservative, right? So that $20,500 turns into $140,000 over that 25 years. If you defer that, and let's assume that you're in the 24% tax bracket. If you defer that, well, hey, you saved almost $5,000 on your $20,500 contribution. Great. In 25 years, though, you're going to have to pay ordinary income tax on your $140,000. So even if your lifestyle doesn't change, your inflation, you're going to be drawing more dollars down the road. So that $140,000 at 10%, you're going to pay Uncle Sam 14 grand. At 20%, you're going to pay Uncle Sam 28,000. So what I'm encouraging people to do is like, hey, it may not be the best to defer all the time, because then you're going to get this huge account where small percentages make a big difference. And look at the percentage of tax you're paying on the future value of that investment. So at some points, it does make sense to go to the pre-tax side, especially the closer you get to retirement. There's all kind of tricks there with Medicare and avoiding IRMA and all of that. But I think for strong savers, the rules of thumb don't apply. You'll create a ticking tax time bomb. You really need to complete your due diligence and structure your strategy based off of your circumstance.
So I think a lot of people say, oh, well, I'll be in a lesser tax bracket when I retire, right? I won't be having as much income. But the point is, you may be paying less of a percentage, but the number is going to be a lot larger.
That's right. The dollars paid in tax may be a lot larger. And again, if you're a strong saver, you may not be in a lesser tax bracket.
For some of our younger listeners that may not even know what a Roth 401k is, the difference, basically you're paying with post-tax money. So like money that has had taxes withheld is in your checking account now, and then you're going to make a contribution sort of versus it being pulled out of your paycheck and you're not paying taxes on it. So, and there's another option for that, which is a Roth IRA. But the problem with that is there's income limits on it, right? Where there's no income limit on a Roth 401k.
That's exactly right. There's income limits on the Roth IRA. You nailed it with the distinction between the Roth and the traditional. You don't get that tax benefit for the Roth upfront, but you do in the terms of free growth on your investment. And to your point, Max, to the younger listener, I mean, I said somebody who's 40 years old. For somebody who's 30, who also maxes out their 401k at $20,500 for this year's max or contribution limit, that turned into like a $390,000 investment. And you're assuming that 8% return annually for the next 35 years. So time compounds your decisions. And I'm just encouraging the pilots to say, hey, let's put the rules of thumb aside. They're good to have us think about our issues, but we really need to focus on your specific circumstance.
And some employers, and I don't know, like at your airline, do they give you the option for a Roth 401k or is it just a regular?
I think you have an option for both.
Yeah.
The nice thing about it too is I've contributed for a Roth for a long time when I could do to an IRA too. And the nice thing I think in retirement is that you can basically change what your income tax bracket is and how much income tax, because you can just say, oh, well, I'm going to take $100,000 of pre-tax and $50,000 of Roth, and you can change. So if you're coming up close to the next tax bracket, you could even flex it to stay in the lower bracket. So it's kind of nice to have both too. So that way, when you're planning in retirement, you have more options, because your expenses are going to be what they are, and you may need to take that much money out to pay your bills, but you may be able to take it from different pots to make it better.
You often say flexibility is the key to air power. Flexibility is the key to tax planning. that what you just described is right on. I had a chat with a retired captain, both him and his wife, retired captains from a major airline. And he was kind of bending my ear a little bit. He's like, Tim, when I was coming up 20 years ago, nobody was doing tax planning. The advice was just max out your 401k. And some of the Roth options were not even available. Now he has pension, he has Social Security. They're getting close to RMDs. And all of this income is making his healthcare premiums go up, the tune of like $1,000 a month. And he's like, you know what? If I had known this was going to happen, I would have done things differently. I would have just put it in a brokerage account. So I'm very fond of saying a little tax planning goes a long way. Dylan, you were asking what are folks getting into. I just recently had a conversation with a pilot who, one of your listeners actually, reached out to me for tax prep, for actually filing the documents and things like that. I should say, so I don't do tax preparation. What I do is I work with the client and their tax advisor on strategy. So this gentleman came and said, hey, look, we bought a house, me and my family. We were in it for a year. It appreciated by a lot. And then a year later, we had to move for family circumstance. So I sold the house and I bought something else. Well, of course, he's stuck with a short-term capital gain, having been in the house for less than 2 years. So I was thinking about that mandate, and I was talking to him, and one of his long-term goals was, hey, I want to develop a rental real estate portfolio. And so I was thinking to myself, I said, well, if he had come to me before and I had that mandate, hey, I want to minimize taxes, I need to move, and one of my long-term goals is develop a rental portfolio, I wonder how it would have worked if he took the equity out of the home, used it for a down payment on the new home, and made some repairs. And if his property is appreciating so quickly in that area, he's probably not having trouble finding a tenant to put into that home. So now he's bought a new home. He's started his rental real estate portfolio sooner and has done so without tax consequence. So that's the value in asking before you execute. Now, I don't think he was working with anybody, so that was tough.
That's a good point. I have a couple questions, Tim. We're talking about Roths. We're talking about changes. No one knows the future. I think especially in the last 12 months, we've just seen fears of inflation and other factors. It seems like if you were to only contribute to a Roth, or you had all your eggs in that basket, there's some risk that tax laws could change on a Roth at some point, right? Or can they change retroactively? Or if an account's been started, is it always going to be under those rules at the time the account started? Do you know anything about that? And is there exposure there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And my crystal ball is as cloudy as everybody else's, right? The short answer to changing it retroactively is, so the folks I talk to, they say, hey, the government's going to change on Roth. I don't think that they'd be able to change it retroactively on the dollars already invested. However, of course, they can always change it moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm a firm believer that taxes are going up. And that's not a political statement. That's just has to with the level of spending that this country does and the way the tax code is. So there's a couple of things, if you watch the legislation, right? Not to bore you, but 2019 in my industry, this was a big deal at the end of 2019, where if you inherited an account from your parents, it used to be that you could, and I'm talking like an IRA or 401k, you could take distributions out of that account over the rest of your life expectancy. Now you have to do that in 10 years. So we think about all these generations before who have loaded up on pre-tax accounts. They pass away and maybe you inherit it. You're making the best money of your career and you have to add distributions. Could be 10 grand a year, could be 100 grand a year, depending on what the account size is. But you have to add those taxable distributions to your taxable income for that year. That was huge. And then COVID happened, which was an even bigger and more important deal, right? So that kind of got lost. So if you watch closely, the legislation is making moves to capture. There was a Cerulli report, which is, again, investment management, but in 2020, they said over the next 25 years, there's going to be $70 trillion that moves hands across generations. That's a lot of money. And I don't think that Uncle Sam is just going to sit by and watch it go without getting access. With the most recent tax legislation push, it failed, but it's out there, and I'm pretty sure it's only a matter of time. Congress turned down, or they're trying to get rid of the step-up basis, which means, Max, you invested a certain amount, your sons inherited it, and they get to move it up to the date that they inherit it versus your original purchase price. Well, Congress says, oh, no, we're going to miss out on that tax opportunity. We want the original purchase price. So there's all these things. So to your point, Dylan, can things change? Absolutely. Will they change? Absolutely. That's why I'm going to keep a job. But I think that pilots can be savvy, because if you're working at American, Delta, Southwest, and maybe others, they're already putting in profit share in your 401k, and that's automatically going to the pre-tax portion anyway. So I say don't add insult to injury and add to that. Diversify on your own with the Roth.
That was exactly my next question. Was for many of us at the large airlines, you're getting that 16, 18% direct contribution, and that is going to be pre-tax, I believe, at most airlines. I could be wrong on that. So if you do have that Roth 401k option, that could be worth exploring for your side of the contribution then.
Correct. And their contributions will be pre-tax because they get to write it off on their taxes, and then they stick you with the growth. I mean, it's a good problem to have. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. The other crazy thing is with profit sharing and the company contribution, a lot of captains that are doing well will exceed the company contribution limit too, of it's like $60,000 something dollars, right?
Mm-hmm,
61,000 or 67 if you're older. Then they just cut you a check. Like you pay taxes on it
it's
then.
just
And
payroll.
Yeah. No, yeah, you just get it. And a lot of guys are like, yeah, I'm buying a boat. But that would be another thing that's a good thing to plan for, is you get this big chunk of post-tax money. You can't contribute it to a Roth IRA because you made too much money at that point, for sure. And so that's another thing I was thinking. I've seen people that just shows up and they don't. That's back when you're getting, 10%
We're rich.
profit sharing plus your whatever percent of the country. I mean, it's like 25+% of your salary at that point, if you do the math.
Okay. Flight instructors, student pilots, regional airline pilots, cover your ears here. This part may not be as interesting to you, but for folks that are maybe in some of these higher income segments, the backdoor Roth move has been pretty successful for a long time. Is that gone now? Is it going away? What's the latest on that?
It's not gone. It may go away. Probably if your AGI is like 400,000 or more. That was the last push. It failed. I celebrated that it failed, but it's still available. And that's one of the things for flight instructors and some of the regional guys that cover the ears. But if you don't have an IRA and you only do Roth, just keep doing that. And then when the backdoor goes away, if your income at that point is under the threshold, then just do the backdoor Roth.
Yeah.
Because the moment you muddy the waters and you have some pre-tax money sitting there, then it kind of destroys the whole strategy and is not clean at all. And sometimes it's a really big discouragement from doing it just because of the amount of tax you'd have to pay.
Okay. Following on to that, a little bit of strategy here. We'll give this out for free maybe. And this is just an idea I had. You can tell me if this is baloney or not. Let's say we're the regional airline pilot. We just got hired at the major, right? Maybe you've worked for a few different employers. You have several different old 401ks from old employers. Strategically, if you are kind of maybe taking that first year pay cut or a pretty low first year salary at the major, is that the time? Obviously, everyone's situation is different, but is that the time to potentially take all your old 401ks and do that Roth conversion?
Yeah. You want a job?
That's a really good idea.
Yeah,
actually.
so,
I hadn't thought about that because your AGI is low.
Because your AGI is going to be the lowest it's probably going to be for the rest of your career on that first year pay
Right.
at the
Well, until you
majors.
get furloughed, but I mean, we won't talk about that.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's an even better.
That's a good idea too. Yeah.
Oh,
That's it. It's a good idea to visit the strategy, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one that kind of goes back to the ask before you execute, right? This was just pure beauty. I had a regional first officer get upgraded to captain, files married, filing jointly. This was in 2021. Said, hey, our AGI is less than $88,000. And we observed he had some highly appreciated individual stocks that he believed in for the future and wanted to hold them for forever.
shout out Tesla.
So Right? Yeah. Not saying any names, but so there was an opportunity for him to sell the stock, rebuy the stock, increase his basis, and not pay any taxes on the gains.
They call that a wash trade, right?
That's if you're trying to take a loss on it.
Oh,
So a wash sale is if you sell it and you have a loss and then you rebuy it within a certain period of time, but you're going to write that loss off and carry that loss forward against other gains.
I gotcha.
That's a wash sale.
Okay.
But to capture your gains, and of course you get slapped on the wrist for a wash sale. Like that's
Right.
That's a no-no. But so he locked in the gains.
Wow. There you go.
Now this is getting exciting.
Ask before.
Everyone is just on the edge of their seats here. I can just everyone commuting.
You
on
just
these,
said he didn't pay any tax. Everyone just sit up
What?
in their seat. What? What did he say?
Yeah. But this is the kind of stuff. And I mean, I recognize for some of our listeners that are maybe just starting their careers out, like some of this stuff is hard to imagine. But for other folks who have some considerable gains, like the amount of money you're going to pay to a financial planner, you're going to probably make up, I would imagine, for most clients, right? I mean, just for a simple tip just like that, right?
I love how you said probably. I love finding these opportunities. Either I'm looking through tax returns or we're coming up with a strategy and I'll just say, hey, you're welcome. You just paid for 10 years of fees.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I've been trying to tell a lot of these captains I fly with that like are going to hammer out their driveway and pour their own concrete or spending all of this time researching what funds for their 401k and all of this stuff. I'm like, dude, focus and do what you do. Just go pick up a trip and go sit there for 5 hours and make enough money to pay for all that. And then let somebody do that. That's what they do. Like stay in your lane.
It's just what we talked about on the last episode with Neil, where it's just like smartly outsourcing expertise.
Yeah. It's funny because I think as pilots for so long until you make it to where you're making good money, you've had to be cheap and do stuff. And it's hard for people to get out of that mentality and look at like what their time is worth and how much they could make if they applied that to doing what they do for a living. Other people do what they do. It's funny.
Exactly.
People have no idea. They're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't paint my whole house. Literally, that's no joke. 2 weeks ago, I talked to a guy with that. He's going to paint his whole house on his days off. I'm like, dude, what are we doing?
Why don't you paint one wall? Let me know.
Yeah, why don't you paint the test colors and then just go to work? Because it's way easier than painting your house. So
That's
funny.
true. How hard is it, Tim? Like you get a new client, a pilot especially, and they do a consult with you. Do you notice a difference between types of professions, like with pilots versus other folks, like convincing them or talking to them and explaining how things work? Have you noticed any character traits or anything when it comes to your clients?
So that's interesting. The pilots who want help are the ones who come to me. The ones who don't.
Yeah, I think pilots, they're not fighting with Tim, they're fighting with themselves. So by the time they call Tim, they've already worn out.
The interesting thing is they've gone along, they've been doing it themselves, and they kind of pause and evaluate where they are in life and say, hey, either I'm getting closer to retirement, the 40 seems to be a magic number, or things are starting to get a little bit more complicated and I could probably mess this up or just not do as well as, I would if this was my day-to-day job. And so then they reach out for help. So I wish I had a nice juicy story for you about,
Oh, it's good. It's people recognizing that they need help. For the next 2.5 hours, Tim and I are going to talk about Bitcoin. So we're looking forward to that part of the conversation. No, one thing though, Tim, I do know for some pilots and just people in general, they have an itch to do investing, right? Like they enjoy it. They enjoy researching stocks or they enjoy researching Bitcoin or whatever. Have you ever advised a client look, take a little percentage of your portfolio, you control it. Have fun. And it's not going to make or break it. You could lose it all and it's not the end of the world, or maybe you're going to do really well. Do you ever find that that's a good strategy?
Absolutely. 5%. That's what I recommend. 5%. That's your play. And if it all goes down the drain, which may not, right? It absolutely may not. It could go either way. But the idea is, hey, if it all goes down the drain, then you have to wait until your portfolio can support you getting another 5%. But yeah, no, and that's a really good middle of the road, right? Because clients acknowledge that, hey, the bulk of this is serious money for our hopes and dreams and families and, things like that. But for the guys and girls who have that itch or who want to educate themselves or who want to do something different and retain control, then I recommend 5% play. And that's whether I'm managing the assets or not. Because if you remember, you don't have to move your assets over to our practice to receive services. So whether your assets are at another custodian, I'm still going to recommend 5%, no more than 5%, but play and have fun. Absolutely.
That's funny that you say that because that's what I do for my employee stock purchase program is that 5% that's essentially going to a certain stock. But if it's a place you work that you believe in and there's a 10% off of the stock price, that's usually a pretty good deal. That's what I use my 5% for.
There you go. I think that's good. It scratches the itch. I mean, listen, there's a reason that the money section is always the first section in the USA Today that the pilots
Yeah,
fight over.
people, it's fun. You put on your phone, you can follow it, and swatch your, and then it scratches that itch. Then I think that's another way to do it. And you already start with a 10% equity position, so you're a little bit better shape. Not that you won't lose it all.
See, that's how long ago I was at the airlines. Like we were still reading the physical copies of the USA Today, and I remember the money section was green. You guys probably don't do that now, do you? It's all on your phone.
I haven't seen a paper version of the USA Today in a long time. Yeah, that used to be a staple of the airlines. I mean, there was jokes predicated on that, remember?
Yeah.
The naked pilot, and how do you know he was a pilot? Because he had a big watch in USA Today.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Tim, I think we're all out of questions. Anything else you want to add?
Today's message was really largely focused on the strong savers because I was tired of seeing strong savers just use the rule of thumb and then create issues for themselves, either currently or down the road. So that was number one. And then number two, for everybody, as always, when it comes to finances and your tax circumstance, you want to complete your own due diligence. So these are some of my strongly held opinions and absolutely informed opinions here on the tax stuff, but complete your own due diligence before you make decisions.
Warning, here comes the disclaimer.
All right. So I'm a financial advisor offering securities and insurance products offered through Cetera Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC, registered office address 5277 Center Drive, Suite 330, Charlotte, North Carolina 28217.
Right. Tim Pope,
Yeah.
Diamond Dog, supporter of the show, and our friend.
Now he just needs to know what a diamond dog is now.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Just Google
we'll
it.
find
Tim.
out.
Find out. Go on YouTube. It's funny. It actually is funny.
Yeah. So it's funny. So like I Googled it because I heard, I kept hearing it on the show. And then I didn't watch anything, dude. I've been busy, man.
All right, Tim. Well, we'll have all of your contact info in the show notes. Pilots can still sign up. Now, is it too late for tax season this year if you get calls? I know we're getting close. We're recording this in the middle of March.
Yeah. I mean, we can have a conversation unless you're a self-employed pilot. So if you're a self-employed contract pilot who was just ripping last year and you already have a small business retirement plan set up, there is still work to be done there. For W-2 guys and guys who are just trading in their own accounts, that has likely passed. And like I said, so I don't do the tax prep. I know there's a firm out. One of my clients just recently introduced me to Positive Rate Tax Advisors, founded by a Delta pilot. You might look them up and check them out if you need tax preparation services. But mine is forward-looking in terms of tax planning.
Love it. All right, Tim.
Good stuff. Thanks,
Appreciate
Tim.
it. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Dylan. We have a very special new segment, our gear review segment.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was carrying 3 bags to work, which was like a flight bag, my rollerboard, and a cooler for food.
Are you a pilot carrying 3 bags?
It is such a pain. More to like ride in the back of an airplane if you're deadheading or something, to have the 3 bags. You're trying to walk down the aisle. It's a nightmare. So I was like, I need to consolidate. Like I don't need to bring all of the stuff that's in my flight bag. So I was out there looking and I got some demo coolers from our friends at Aerocoast. Sent me their EFB Pro 2 cooler.
So that's that one.
It's a EFB combo because obviously I'm trying to eliminate the flight bag and have a cooler that will hold my other stuff, my flashlight, my passport, and headset, and all this other junk, right?
Right.
And then our friends at Strongbags also sent us a demo of their cooler EFB bag. And I have taken them both to work. I've tried them in the real world. They're both very good bags. So I used both, and both of these bags are really good. There's some differences between them, and I think depending on what your goal is, one may suit you better than the other. Let's start with the Aerocoast. So these bags all essentially have a cooler portion, is the largest portion of the bag. Then there's a top portion that stores your other stuff, your dry food and whatever, this is a coffee maker. That's another episode
Okay.
we'll talk about, but how to make proper coffee on the road.
Oh,
And they all have a front pocket to hold your other stuff, and then a back pocket that normally is where you put like your EFB.
okay. And turn it a little bit so they can see what's on the side there.
Yeah. And then on the side, this one, the Aerocoast has some side zip open pockets that have like spots for, pencils and your passport and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Strongbags one is more of the zip out cup holder kind of deal where you put a coffee cup and you can put whatever else in there. What I was using before is like the eBags crew cooler that I think has been around forever.
Yep.
And there's different iterations of it, but they're all basically the same thing, right?
Yep.
If it gets wet in there, it leaks through. It's not like watertight. It's good. It's just not a great product.
Right.
These are much better as far as the cooler is concerned. They're both way better insulated for one. Like you can tell they hold ice for a long time. If you don't unzip it and rezip it a lot, like it will hold stuff for days. Same with the Strongbags. So they're both much more durable, watertight. It doesn't get everything wet if you have an incident. So that's number one. So with the Aerocoast cooler here, the top portion with the dry storage is probably a little bit smaller than the Strongbags one, but you can still, I fit all of my food, like even on a 4-day trip, I can hold in both of these coolers. The biggest problem when you're going from the 3-bag situation to the 2-bag is what do you do with your headset? Because I used to put my headset in like my flight bag, and that probably took up a good almost half of it, right?
Right.
So now it's what do you do with your headset? There's just not room unless you don't carry a lot of extra like dry food in the top part. You could fit your headset in there. Otherwise, there's nowhere to put your headset. So with both of these bags, the biggest downside going to 2-bag deal is
I'm going to move the camera here so we can try
your
and see
headset
this.
has to be held somewhere else externally. And so what I did is I got one of these S clips, and my headset has a pretty good rigid bag. And so I just clip it like on this bag. I just clip it onto here, and it just hangs like this while I'm pulling it through the airport or whatever. So it just hangs off the front. It's not that big of a deal. And then when I get in the airplane, I usually just take this off and set it down next to it, take my headset out, and then when I'm packing up, I just clip it back onto my bag. So the headset does have to be held externally, is my point.
And that's on both bags, right?
Yeah, both bags. I think you could fit it in the top, but it takes up all of your storage space and then options.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, it doesn't work, but I also bring a whole like coffee mug and brewing setup, which takes up a lot of room. So it may work for somebody else, depending on what headset you have. Whether it's a Bose or Clarity Loft also makes a big difference. So they both have great storage, though, for food and dry storage on top for dry food. And then you have the last component, which is where do you put all of your stuff? My stuff consists of my passport. I always keep a bunch of ones to tip people. I have pens, eating utensils, and a flashlight, right? So all these have a front pocket that you can fit most of that stuff in. So the Aerocoast has 2 pockets.
That was the Aerocoast bag, right? So then let's switch bags for a second and talk me through any specifics you saw on that one. And while you were talking, I actually was able to get your headset bag to fit in the top of that one.
So you could fit it, but again, if you're looking at the video component of this, then you can get it to fit, but you'll just have a little bit of storage here for other stuff. So again, which didn't work for me, but
would depend,
might work for other people.
Well, especially if you're not, maybe not doing 4-day trips.
That's true. So the Strongbags cooler, also very solid piece of equipment. Like I said, the cooler, super durable. The liner, it's watertight. It lives up to the name of being a strong bag, very robust zippers and stuff like that. Same front pocket. The side ones zip out. You have to carry your so the EFB, I was storing because I had this top part full of other stuff. So I would slide my EFB in here, and this is a zipper pass through if you want to put it over the handle of your rollerboard. So I just let the zipper close, and I would just slide it in there.
Okay.
And it stays pretty good in there. I was able, it was no big deal.
Well, that answered a question for me too, because it's been so long since I've been in the airline game. When I had a cooler like this, I always had to use the pass through because I had the flight case.
Right.
And that was what was on the J hook. But that's not really the case anymore, right?
No, when you have all of that stuff in here, these actually get fairly heavy, especially at the beginning of a trip. So it's much easier to have it on the hook because it's obviously balances everything on those wheels,
right?
Versus you having to support it. So this bag now goes on the J hook for sure, the combo bag.
So you don't really have anything on the handle, which is nice because the weight.
Yeah, and it's annoying to take it on and off. Again, that's what you're doing with that cooler, and it's a whole nother step, and It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're doing it every day, multiple times, it's really obnoxious.
So you were saying the Strongbag one from a like cooler capacity.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, these two coolers are very similar. I would be happy with really either of them on the road. I think that if you're trying to maximize the amount of food you can carry, then I think the Strongbags one is probably better suited to you. The top compartment is a little bit bigger, and the cooler area is probably a little bit bigger. But then you just have the one front pocket and the two side kind of drink holder / whatever you want to hold in their pockets. The Aerocoast has a little one for your sunglasses, and then these side pockets that zip open have like little slots and for stuff. So if you have more stuff, not for your food, but you like to have more trinkets and pens and pencils, and some guys have highlighters for the release and different colors. And if you're one of those people, then I think the Aerocoast one might suit you a little bit better because there's just more pockets to organize your stuff.
So you sacrifice a little bit of cooler space to get a little bit more utility.
Yeah.
I think the Strongbags one too, I was looking at, like, I think there are some people that are doing what you're doing and just going to 2 bags. I think there's also a lot of people that have like little backpacks and do have that computer bag and stuff that they're going to carry with them, right?
Well, and there's other people, if you're an FFDO,
right.
You have to have a bag to keep that stuff. And so there's different requirements for everybody, depending on what their situation is and how long of trips they fly and how much, But I was really impressed by both of these bags. Honestly, the build quality, I think they're really good. The other thing too that Strongbag sent was one of these water bags. You fill it up with water and you freeze it at home to a big chunk of ice.
Yep.
And that seems to hold in there for a really long time. And then if you get to the hotel and you put that in the refrigerator along with the rest of your food, it really doesn't melt very quickly at that point either. Because some rooms just don't have fridges and freezers.
Right.
So you just leave it in there and you get ice and deal with it like that. I also bring a couple of small, very thin ice packs because those are actually really easy to put in the freezer at the hotel. And usually if I use those, even on a 4-day, the ice in here will last like almost to the end.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I haven't had experience with Aerocoast, but I have had a Strongbag suitcase before. And the thing that was cool was when something broke, they've kind of designed it as sort of, we'll ship you the parts and you can fix it if you want to, which I think is nice because as you know, as a professional pilot, like taking a bag out of service, that's a problem.
Unless you have an extra bag.
Yeah. So I did like that. The Aerocoast one does look like its build quality is going to hang for a while. I mean, the nature of the game, though, with what we're doing, it's only a matter of time till any bag breaks,
nothing's going to last forever. But I think people have to have that mindset. The one more thing I will mention about the Aerocoast is that it does come with this optional, which they sent as well, water bottle holder on the side that holds a sizable water bottle. And I have to carry this big water bottle for how I do my food. This is harder to carry around sometimes. I had to put it in the top part of the Strongbags, but it's a little bit bigger, so it worked. Well, a lot of guys or gals carry either a water bottle or they have a big coffee cup or all kinds of stuff. So again, it depends on each person, but much happier though with just 2 bags at work.
So if you could wave your magic wand with any of these options, like, is there anything that's missing, like for version 2 of this bag, or for somebody like you that's just wants to do the combo 2 bag? Is there anything else that we could ask for?
Yeah, the only thing really that comes to mind that's more of a pain than it was with 3 bags is dealing with this headset situation.
Okay.
And nowhere has a great spot to clip the headset. If you clip like this bag, both bags have these on the side for a shoulder strap, but you can clip it on the side, but it hangs down and you see every time it's dragging around on the ground when you're towing it. So this doesn't really work. And the only way I figured out how to do it is you got to clip it on both straps. Yeah. Otherwise it falls to one or the other and just kind of let it lay on the front of the bag, which works, but it's just, that's the best I've come up with. Okay. What would be really nice is if they had a clip somewhere on here where you could clip your headset or deal with this headset.
On the side of the bag, I guess, is probably, well, it's tough because everyone's got a different type of headset. So you couldn't really, it would be trickier.
It would. So send that one to the engineers.
Okay. So
somewhere for the headset to go
we'll have links to both of these bags in the show notes, so you can check them out. And I don't think you can really go wrong. It's more of a personal preference, I guess, on what you want.
Yeah. So for me, when I was looking for the solution, it's hard without actually using it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the intent of this is you know what you need. And I think if you're looking for pure carrying capacity of food stuff, then the Strongbags one. If you want to carry a bunch of other stuff and have it all organized and this and that, then the Aerocoast one. But both are awesome. And if you have 3 bags, I would seriously consider making the switch, because life is much easier with 2 bags.
It's easier with 2. I'm still blown away with the chart case stuff. It's so funny to think about how long that's been gone, but that's the last thing I knew.
And people still carry those.
I know, we've talked about that before. Oh, I guess that would be one strike that I'm going to have to give both of these lunch bags at this point, is you can't put stickers on them. Right? Like we used to on the flight kit.
That's right.
But you could do a patch or something.
I suppose you could.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was good. Thank you to Strongbags and Aerocoast for sending these demo units out. And if you're listening to this on the podcast format, we do have this on video format as well. And that'll be up on our YouTube channel. I'll have a link to that so that you can actually see what we're talking about.
See what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if you guys have any other gear that you want reviewed, I mean, we're obviously thinking headsets, rollerboard bags, the normal stuff, but anything else, let us know. And we'll do our best to get demos and do the review.
All right, episode 73 has reached its final destination. Please remain seated as we taxi up to the gate. Refrain from standing until the captain has turned off the fasten seatbelt sign. It certainly has been our pleasure to have you on board today.
I've flown to 7 continents.
Your flight is in good hands. I've consulted on 3 movies. Hollywood, right? Is that the name of the guy?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
What we're referring to is like the funniest airline captain, PA of all time.
Yes. One of my favorites. Well, I really enjoyed that episode, Max. That was cool to check out the gear. Thank you for setting that up.
It was good.
I want to hear from our listeners on what we should review next.
Yeah, me too.
info@215podcast.com if you want to get a hold of us. Thanks to our sponsors, Tim Pope, Certified Financial Planner, Harvey Watt, Insurance, and Advanced Aircrew Academy. Their information is in the show notes if you want to get a hold of them. Episode 74 will be coming up in a couple of weeks. Till then, remember,
ask before you execute.
Oh!
And flexibility is the key to air power.
That's right. Go order a hat. 215podcast.com.
And your tax planning.
That's right. See ya.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.